Today I'm doing it double. I'm making this stunning double strung necklace. It's so beautiful. It's got this beautiful pendant in the center and it uses these gorgeous oval beads. Hi, my name's Carol. Welcome to my channel. It's lovely to have you here. Let's have a look at what you need to make this necklace and take you step by step through the process. This necklace is quite large, so it does have quite a few components. I've got here 74 of these 6mm faceted round glass beads, and this one is clear AB, and this one I've got 6 of the crystal glass beads as well in an aqua colour. I've got 2 of these acrylic ovals. These ones are 28 by 22, so quite large, and I have 10 12mm glass crystal faceted round beads here in the colour aqua. In my little tray here, I have 8 crimp beads, 2mm crimp beads. I've got 2 of these beautiful silver metal rings. They measure about 15mm. I've got 4 of these beautiful polymer clay beads. These ones are stunning. I just love these. They remind me of Easter eggs. I've got 2 lampwork foil-lined twist beads, and I have a toggle clasp. I've got 9 6mm jump rings. Down here I have a heart-shaped pendant, and I have a star connector as well as a 5cm eye pin. In the description box below I will leave details of all of the materials that you need with links, so you don't need to remember all of this. In terms of tools, you will need a pair of round nose pliers, a pair of flush cutters, and you'll also need 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. And for stringing you'll need some tiger tail, and it's probably about 1 metre that you'll need. Alright, so I'm going to first cut my tiger tail, and what I'm going to do first is kind of take a guess at how much I'll need for the first string of necklace. So I'm just going to kind of hold it up to myself and go, okay, that's about right, and add a bit, because you know you always need a little bit extra to work with. So just popping that aside, I have a piece that's about 50 centimetres long. I'm just going to roll that up for now and put it aside, because before I string I'm actually going to make the dangly part of the necklace. Okay, and I'm going to do that using my 2 metal pieces here, so I'll just move everything else out of the way. Give me some room to work. Okay, so this is what I need. What I'm going to do is I am going to thread the bead onto the head pin, the eye pin, sorry. And I'm just going to take my flush cutters and I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to bend the wire over at the top of the bead. Just like that. Next I'm going to take my flush cutters and I am going to cut that head pin, eye pin, cut the eye pin at about 1 centimetre from the bend. Just making sure I'm holding both ends of the wire and using the flush side of my cutters. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to make a loop. And I'm just going to position the wire between the jaws of the pliers and just make sure it's not sticking up. So I can feel it's still sticking up a little bit, so I'll just move it down, rub my finger across the top, and I can feel that it's no longer sticking up. And I'm just going to, what I do is I tuck my thumb inside, under the pliers into that bend, and I push down and twist. So twist your arm as far as it will go, take the pliers out, reposition them onto the lower jaw and twist some more. Okay, and it's not quite closed, so I'm just going to give it a bit more of a twist. There we go. And there's my loop. Now one thing I do want to do is I want to make sure that both of my loops are going the same way. So I'm going to take both my pairs of pliers. I'm going to hold the top loop in one pair and the bottom loop in the other, and just twist so that they're both going exactly the same way. So that's my little component. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the heart to the bottom of this connector that I've just made. And I'm going to do that by taking both my pliers, and I want to open the loop. So I put this pair of pliers on the side of the loop that opens and this pair on the side of the loop that doesn't. And I'm just going to twist my hand down and open the loop. And I'm going to attach the heart to the loop and just reverse the process to close that up. Now sometimes it's really hard to get your pliers in there, so you can actually just kind of hold it and do it with your fingers. That worked. And just make sure it's really well closed. And that's what I have now. Next, I'm going to add this connector onto this one using the same process. So just taking my pliers to the opening side of the loop and my other set on the other side and just opening it. Feet on the connector. Now you'll see with this connector it has one hole at the top and it has 5 at the bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm connecting it to the center one there. And I also need to make sure that it's going to hang the right way. So I want it to be on the same way. And just closing up my loop. So that's what I have now. All right, the last thing we're going to do to complete this component is put a jump ring on the top. Now I am going to use both pairs of pliers to do that because I don't want to destroy the round shape of my jump ring. So just putting my pliers on either side and twisting up, popping on the component and just reversing that to close it. Now if a jump ring doesn't close, as you can see, whoops, you can probably see there that mine isn't closed properly. What I'm going to do is take both pairs of pliers and hold it in the same way, and I'm moving up and down and pushing it towards each other at the same time. So what I'm looking for here is a nice tight close. There's my component with its jump ring on the top. All right, the next part of the gosh, I've been making earrings so long. The next part of the necklace is just stringing the main part. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to lay it out first, and normally I would use my beadboard, but this is quite a big necklace, so I'm actually just going to lay it out on the board in front of me. I'm going to start with my component in the middle. There we go. That's the first thing I'm going to put on. Well, it's actually not the first thing I'm going to put on. Now I'm going to take some of my 6mm beads, and I'm actually going to lay out 2 on either side of that component there. And next I'm going to add my large ovals. Then I'm going to add 3 of my my glass, faceted glass round beads. Then I think I will add my clay beads. Then 3 more of my round ones. And just laying them out how you would like it on either side. Next, I'm going to use my twist beads. 3 more on either side of my little clear faceted ones. And more polymer clay beads, there we go. And lastly, heading up to the ring, I'm going to use 3 more of my, I'm running out of space, you can't see them. 3 more of my faceted round beads. Okay, now I'm actually going to string that now, and then we can come back and do the rest. So let's pop that onto the tiger tail. I'm just going to use one of my beads here as a bead stopper. So just popping it on my tiger tail and threading it through again from the same way, same direction. And that will just stop any beads falling off that end. And now I'm just going to string them in this order. So I've got half of my necklace strung, and I've just got to this component here, and I am just going to thread it on. And this is why I needed to make sure that my jump ring was really, really well closed, because the tiger tail is quite fine and I didn't want the tiger tail to slip out of the jump ring. All right. So there you go, that's half, and I'm just going to string the rest. Alright, now I have the whole of my necklace, or this first run anyway, strung. There we go. It's looking pretty good. That was easy. Now the next part is to add the crimps and the metal rings. So I'll take those 2 rings, and I need 2 jump rings, and I need 2 crimp beads. Now, crimp beads are notorious for flying away or moving, you know, running away. All right. Now I want to give myself a little bit more space. I'm going to take this placeholder bead off, or this bead stopper bead off, and just kind of center it in the middle of the tiger tail. Now initially I tried doing this without the jump rings, where I just fed the tiger tail onto the round metal ring, but I didn't get it sitting how I wanted it, so I decided that I would use the jump rings as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my jump rings are nicely closed, and hopefully you can see that. It's not quite closed. It's lined up and everything, but I'm just going to give it a bit of a squeeze that way. So that didn't work. Sometimes that works, sometimes it just pops them into place. So this time I'm just going to give it a bit of a wiggle with both my pliers and make sure it's really well closed, and I'm going to do the same with the other one. Perfect. All right. Okay, so I am going to feed on my crimp bead. Then I'm going to feed on my jump ring. And now I'm going to go back down through the crimp bead. And I'm actually going to take my tiger tail down through a couple of beads as well. Maybe down through the 4, so this polymer clay bead here. All right, now I'm going to pull that nice and tight so that the jump ring can still move, but there's not a lot of space there. I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to give that crimp bead, just take the crimp bead within the jaws of the pliers and give it a good squeeze. Now the object here is to flatten it. So you can see that it's nice and flat. Now I'm going to trim off my tiger tail, my short piece, nice and close to the bead, and that end will just disappear into the next bead, so you don't need to worry about that. Oops. All right, and now I'm going to do the other end exactly the same, just making sure there's no gaps. So running my beads all the way down to this end and repeating on this end. So I've threaded on the crimp bead and my jump ring. So there's the first string of my necklace, and what I'm going to do next is add these beautiful silver metal rings. So I'm going to do that by taking 2 pairs of my pliers, my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to open the jump ring. So just finding the part where the jump ring opens and putting it at the top of your pliers and holding it on either side with 1 pair of pliers and just twisting, pop the ring on and just reverse that to close it. Once again, you need to make sure that your jump ring is really well closed. All right, and repeating for the other side. Alright, so that's the first string of the necklace. Now if you didn't want this to be a double string necklace, you could actually just use this part and create the end, or the back part. But we're going to create another piece for the centre. To do that, I'm actually just going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to bring in my large beads here. They're all quite large beads, aren't they? And my 6mm beads as well. So the pattern for this is pretty easy. It's 3 of the clear beads and 1 of the 12mm. So really, really easy. Probably don't even need to lay it out, but I'm going to. Now you're not going to be using all of the 12mm here, so put 2 aside. And just 3 between. Pretty easy. It's a good idea to get into the practice of laying it out before you string it though, because it saves mistakes. Often I've strung a necklace when I haven't done that and realised I've missed a bead when I get to the end, which is really, really frustrating. I'm going to take some more tiger tail and I'm going to string these on. So this time I'm actually using probably about the same amount, but probably 30 centimeters will do this time. I'm going to need some crimp beads again, 2 and 2 jump rings. And this time I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm actually going to put my jump ring on at the beginning. So just threading on my crimp bead and my jump ring, making sure it's nice and closed, which it isn't. So I'll just give it a little bit of a squeeze and see if I can close it. That's cool. And threading it on. Now I know I'm opening my jump rings again, but it is good to have them well closed so they don't fall off while you're stringing. Okay, my crimp bead has run right down to the end. So just threading it through the crimp bead again and making sure it is through. Sometimes it's really, really easy when you're using crimp beads to think you've got it through and not have it through. Alright, so pushing the crimp bead nice and close to the jump ring, but making sure the jump ring still moves. Grabbing my pliers and giving it a squeeze. There you go, it's nice and flat. And start stringing. All right, so I've got all of my beads on, and notice that my end's sticking out. So what I'm going to do is just pull the beads back and thread it down through those first few beads. And it's still a bit long, so I'm going to cut it off a little bit. And just running my beads all the way up. Now you notice that I have made a mistake because I have forgotten to put 3 beads on the end, so I'll do that now. So that's just proof that even when you do lay them out, you sometimes make a mistake. Okay, so now we're going to crimp this end the same way as we did this end, the same way as we did this end. So feeding on that crimp bead. And my jump ring. Just going to give it a bit of a squeeze, make sure it's well closed. It's not going to go into place, so I'm going to give it a bit of a wiggle here. It's actually crossing over a little bit. Still crossing over a little bit. So obviously when they're crossed over, you pull them out as you wiggle them up and down. So thread that on next, and then just put and then threading back down through that crimp bead and through a few of the beads. And making sure that that gap is nicely closed up so there's no space between the beads in the necklace. Just double checking. I've got a little bit of a gap there, so I'll just pull it a little bit harder. You can actually pull tiger tail really hard. It's really strong. Okay, a little bit more. Nope, still not happy with it. I'm going to move my crimp bead down, and using my pliers I'm just going to pull up that tiger tail a bit. There we go. That's got it. And now squeezing nice and tight. And trimming off my tiger tail as close as I can to that bead. And when things move around, it will disappear inside. So that's my second string, and what I'm going to do now is open the jump rings. Let's move that out of the way, and I'm going to attach them to the large metal rings as well. So remember how to do that with our 2 pairs of pliers. Next, it's the part that goes around the back of your neck. Alright, so I'm just moving that out of the way and bringing in my last lot of beads to string and getting some more tiger tail. Whenever I'm working with tiger tail, I always use more rather than less. So what I'm going to do is once again lay out my beads in the order that I'm going to string them. So I'm going to start with my large beads, and then I'm going to pop on 3 of my crystal beads, 1 aqua and 3 crystal, and another aqua and one more crystal. Now if you need to adjust the length of the necklace, this is where you would do it. So you would add another 3, another 2, whatever you need. I'm going to do that for the other side as well. Once again, it gives you a good opportunity to double check that you have it correctly laid out. There we go. We're also going to need 2 jump rings, 4 of our crimp beads, and our clasp. So that's the last of our materials. I'm going to take one piece of tiger tail. Now you'll notice this one has a little burr on the end, so I'm going to trim that off first because that will impede my threading ability, make it much harder. So just trimming that off, popping on a crimp bead and a jump ring, which I am of course going to make sure is well closed before I use it. Alright, so I've got my crimp bead on, popping on my jump ring, and then going back down through my crimp bead. I don't want to use too much, so I'm actually just going to pull my tiger tail up a bit so I don't have a huge long tail. Just like before, squeezing the crimp bead, making sure that the jump ring still moves, and I'm going to thread on my beads. There you go, there's my string of beads, and you know what to do next. We're going to put on the crimp bead. This time we're going to put on the clasp. So I'm going to push that, thread that through the loop of the clasp, and then come down through the crimp bead. And as you can see, I've got quite a lot of tiger tail here, but I would prefer to work with more rather than less. And pulling it up so that the beads are nice and tight on there, there's no gaps, but making sure that, don't do that. I've just put the tiger tail around the bar of my clasp. You don't want to do that. So pulling it back. These things happen sometimes. There we go, that's more what we wanted. Now you do need to make sure that you give it enough room for your clasp to be able to move really freely. In fact, I might give mine just a little bit more room. Just do that by pulling. Just squeezing closed my crimp bead just like before and trimming off my excess. And repeat for the other side. Now I've got both pieces of the back strung. All I need to do now is add them to the main part. Now one thing to think about here is if you're left or right-handed. So I am right-handed, and I like to have one side of the clasp on my right side, and it's generally I prefer to have the toggle part, but the bar part of the toggle clasp, but it's up to you. Toggle clasps aren't quite so important. It's when I use lobster clasps I really get into trouble. So I'm going to open my jump ring of my end piece of my back piece, just like before. Open it up, pop on that the main part of the necklace, and close it. Once again, making sure that it's closed really well. You can actually generally hear when you close a jump ring well, because it kind of makes a grazing noise next to the other side of the jump ring. And this one too. Okay. Here's my beautiful necklace. And there it is, and it's too big for me to be able to get it all on camera. I hope you've really enjoyed making this necklace with me today. It was quite a project. It was quite a large, time-consuming project, but certainly worth it when you have a result like this. As I said, I've left links in the description box below for everything you will need to make this necklace. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel and like the video, and of course ring the bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content, which is once a week. Also, you might like to check out our Facebook page and our Instagram, which I'll also leave links in the description box below. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.